Thumbs up if you can hear me. Good morning. My name is Chad Buterba, and I serve as the Senior Program Director of the Maryland State Art Council. A couple of notes before we get started. To ensure an equitable process, we will be using a script to guide today's panel meeting, so there will be a high level of formality in our presentation. Also note that this meeting is being recorded. Slide, please. Panelists, thank you for being here and for your service to the arts communities of Maryland. This is our fiscal 24 County Arts Development Panel meeting. The date is 12th of May, 2023. Slide. To begin, here's a reference shot for the features for Google Meet, excuse me. Please note the mute button, which is a microphone icon, and the video button, which is a camera icon, are both located at the bottom of the screen. Panelists try to avoid any background noise by remaining on mute during the meeting, unless you're speaking. Additionally, we ask that all comments regarding applicants are vocalized and to refrain from using the chat feature. Slide, please. Are there any questions about Google Meet? Okay, slide. Next, we'll go through some introductions. I'll start by introducing MSAC team members and our roles during today's meeting. I've already introduced myself, and my role beyond this introduction is monitoring today's meeting. Also monitoring the process is Maryland State Arts Counselor, John Schratweiser. David D. Mitchell, County Arts Development Program Director, is serving as the staff discipline expert today. He has reviewed the applications that you'll discuss today. Kathy Teixeira, Grants Director, will be serving as panel facilitator and recording final recommendations. Rosa Chang, Special Projects and Grants Management Associate, will be our timekeeper and provide technical support throughout today's meeting. Panelists, please introduce yourselves by name and art form. David will say your name for your introduction, and please be sure to unmute yourself before speaking.
Thanks, Chad. Twee, why don't you take it? We'll just go right down the list here.
Hi, everyone. My name is Twee McCallum. I'm a sound designer for theater, podcasts, TV, things like that. And I also work for Baltimore Office of Promotion in the Arts.
Thank you. Judy.
Hi, I'm Judy Benderson, and I'm a painter. And I have in the past done some arts administration. I was the managing director for the Washington Women's Arts Center. And later on, I was a founding member and co-president of Rockville Arts Place, which is now Viz Arts.
Awesome. Thank you. And Mary?
First of all, my name isn't Mary Callis anymore. It's Mary Matier Cummings.
We're having trouble hearing you, Mary.
Okay, let me sorry. Is that better? Is that worse?
It's like you're really low. Like you hear a faint whisper.
Oh.
There we go.
Oh, that's better?
Yes.
Okay. So I recently got married. So my name's Mary Cummings now. I'm sorry I haven't updated that information. I am the executive director for the Performing Arts Center at Garrett College and also for the Garrett Lakes Arts Festival in Garrett County, Maryland.
Thank you and congratulations.
Thank you.
Sarah.
Hi, my name is Sarah Capraletti. I'm a mixed media artist and I work for the Sandy Spring Museum and also Prince George's County Arts Division.
Thank you. And Carrie.
Hello, everyone. My name is Carrie Michael Robinson. I am an interdisciplinary artist. I am also the CEO of Art Bay LLC, which is an arts collective, as well as the founder of the Art Bay Foundation, the nonprofit arm. And I'm also a design patent examiner for the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office.
All right. Thank you. Chad, back over to you.
Thanks, David, and thanks, panelists. How wonderful to hear from you all this morning. Just for your knowledge, in accordance with Maryland's Open Meetings Act, applicants may also be attending online. but counselors, applicants, and any other guest may observe but may not otherwise participate in the process. If you are here to monitor, observe, please be sure to remain on mute and off camera throughout the duration of the meeting. We'll now review MSAC's guiding documents to ground today's process. First is our land acknowledgement statement covering the full state of Maryland. It goes as follows. We acknowledge the lands and waters now known as Maryland are the home of its first peoples, the Akahannock Indian Tribe, Assateague Peoples Tribe, Cedarville Band of Piscataway Indians, Chopticot Band of Indians, Lenape Tribe, Nanticoke Tribe, Nasuewash Band of Indians, Piscataway Conoy Tribe, Piscataway Indian Nation, Pocomoke Indian Nation, Susquehannock Indians, Youghiogheny River Band of Shawnee, and tribes in the Chesapeake watershed who have seemingly vanished since the coming of colonialism. We acknowledge that this land is now home to other tribal peoples living here in diaspora. We acknowledge the forced removal of many from the lands and waterways that nurtured them as kin. We acknowledge the degradation that continues to be wrought on the land and waters in pursuit of resources. We acknowledge the right of the land and waterways to heal so that they can continue to provide food and medicine for all. We acknowledge that it is our collective obligation to pursue policies and practices that respect the land and waters so that our reciprocal relationship with them can be fully restored. Our equity and justice statement. The arts celebrate our state's diversity, connect our shared humanity, and transform individuals and communities. MSAC and its supporting collaborators are committed to advancing and modeling equity, diversity, accessibility, and inclusion in all aspects of our organizations and across communities of our state. MSAC and its grantees are committed to embracing equity and non-discrimination, regardless of race, religious creed, color, age, gender expression, sexual orientation, class, language, and/or ability. Our vision is to play an essential role ensuring every person has access to the transformative power of the arts. Our mission is to advance the arts in our state by providing leadership that champions creative expression, diverse programming, equitable access, lifelong learning, and the arts as a celebrated contributor to the quality of life for all the people of Maryland. We adopted a strategic plan in 2019 that is still in force. It comprises 5 main goals, which are listed in bold here. I will read the bold portions only, but the regular text is there for you to review as well if you wish. Goal 1 is to increase participation. Goal 2 is to provide intentional support. Goal 3, build capacity. Goal 4, leverage connections. And Goal 5, bolster Maryland arts. In our panel meetings and many public-facing meetings, we ask participants to observe these creative meeting actions, which I will start and will then pass the mic to somebody else to read off the next action until we get to the bottom of the list. So today we want to celebrate being in the space with other creative people, and let's pass it to Carrie.
Engage with everyone's presence as a gift.
Acknowledge that together we know a lot.
Enter the conversation with curiosity and inquiry.
Share your idea and trust that it will be heard.
Use I statements.
Focus your language on the task at hand.
Hold one another accountable with care.
Apply yes, and I hear your idea and I'm going to add to it.
Balance speaking and listening.
You all sound wonderful. I'm going to take a moment to talk a little bit about equity as expressed through impact of application versus grant writing acumen. The application that any applicant receives is meant to inspire authentic reflection and internal analysis for each applying organization, with the knowledge that MSAC is to be seen and utilized as a collaborative partner in the process. So one aspect of this partnership is to guide panelists to see beyond the so-called polish of grant writing, which may be inequitably influenced by the privilege of resources, whether those are financial, educational, or of any other kind, and instead to be focusing on the impact of the applicant. So, for example, we ask that panelists frame their responses as recommendations. In this case, you'll see if you have the ideas, the programming description did not mention community connection. That would then become, I would recommend that the planned county arts agency programming include descriptions of its benefit to the local community. And your recommendations in that regard will provide valuable feedback for applicants. So we'll move forward with further goals and instruction shortly, but for now, are there any questions about the role of the panelist in today's proceedings? Okay, well, that's the most you'll hear from me today, but I will be observing throughout, and I'm going to hand it over now to Kathy Teixeira to lead us through the next part of the introduction. Take it away, Kathy.
Thanks, Chad. The goal of today is to arrive at a final recommendation for 6 county arts development applications. Please note for those observing that this panel meeting is not the full panel review process. Comprehensive application reviews and initial feedback has been submitted by panelists prior to today's meeting. Today is an opportunity for the panel to hear additional information gathered from panelists who conducted in-depth conversations with county arts agency staff. Panelists will be able to add to or edit their initial reviews and make final recommendations based on discussions held today. The final recommendations considered today will determine how each county arts agency moves forward in the funding process. Also, a reminder to panelists that this is not a comparative process. Each application is to be evaluated individually based on the rubric provided. Any comparison content between applications should not influence your final recommendation. So next on the screen, you'll see, slide please. On the screen, you'll see a breakdown of the time allotment for each agency's application review. The panelists who conducted the in-depth assignment will speak first and will have 3 minutes to summarize overall impressions and information from the in-depth assignment, highlight strong and weak parts of the 3-year plan, and summarize recommendations. Our timekeeper, Rosa, will alert us at the 3-minute mark. Then we will open it up for additional discussion with all panelists for 5 minutes, during which time the full panel may share additional information, ask questions of the panelists who conducted the in-depth assignment, or make additional recommendations. Rosa, again, will alert us at the 5-minute mark. Then I will ask staff discipline expert David to contribute any additional thoughts based on his analysis of the application. His contributions are intended to ensure that recommendations are in alignment with MSAC's commitment to equity, justice, and procedural transparency. To conclude his comments, David will call for a formal recommendation from the panel on whether to accept the application as is or request revisions. Then panelists will be provided 2 minutes to revise and complete their final comments in Smart Simple. If there are any thoughts or recommendations that come to mind after the discussion periods have ended that you may not have had a chance to vocalize, you can include those additional comments in the comments field in Smart Simple. Do you have any questions about the panel meeting structure? All right. Please note that any identified conflicts of interest will be announced prior to an application's review. Panelists, if you have a conflict of interest that we do not already recognize, please just announce yourself at the beginning of that application's review. Those with conflicts will now not participate in discussions and review. Finally, I'd like to mention that we will be taking breaks throughout the day, and depending on how we're doing on timing, we may shift some break times, but we'll be sure to let you know when we plan on doing so. Before we move forward, are there any questions about the panel structure? All right, and a quick reminder again for counselors and all guests joining us today that you may not participate verbally or in the chat box. Your role today is as observer only. Please be sure to remain on mute and turn your cameras off. And a reminder to panelists as well to stay on mute unless you're speaking. This will really help eliminate any background noise. All right, so we are going to get started with a practice round using a test application. So panelists, you should now be logged into your Smart Simple account on your panelist home screen, and you'll see today's applications listed under the pending final review section. So please go ahead and click on that. And just as you did at home, you'll be able to click Open on the right-hand side for each application to access the scoring rubric. And the application itself will appear as a pop-up when you click on Application Summary. So for our practice round, please go ahead and open application 2024-25036 for the Maryland State Arts Council. And if this were a real application, you would see all of your initial notes here. Since this is just a test application, you're going to see some filler text included in each of the comment boxes. For this practice round, we're going to walk through what the process would look like if this were a real review, and you'll hear the script that we'll be using for all of the reviews today. So panelists, please open test application from the Maryland State Arts Council, application ID 2024-25036. The panelists that conducted the in-depth assignment will now have 3 minutes to share any information gathered. And this is where that lead panelist would have 3 minutes to speak. Then I will open it up to all. In the real review period, you would now have 5 minutes for discussion. This period is to be used for sharing additional information, asking questions of the panelists who conducted the in-depth assignment, or making additional recommendations. If the lead panelist did not complete their remarks and was cut off at the 3-minute mark, they would be able to complete their thoughts during this period. After the discussion period, I would turn to David. As the staff discipline expert, do you have any additional information to share? And this is where David would chime in with anything additional and conclude by calling for a verbal final recommendation from the panel to either accept the application as is or request revisions. Then finally, I would say, based on the information gathered from the discussion, please take time now to revise your comments in Smart Simple in alignment with the rubric. When finished, click Complete. So we'll actually take some time now for you to revise comments on this test application and hit Complete, so we can make sure everything's working properly and that things are coming through on the back end here. So panelists, if you could actually kind of just run through this test application, you can mess with some of the comments fields, and then when you're done, please hit the Complete button at the bottom of the screen for this application. So we'll take a moment to do so right now. All right, I see that you all have hit the complete button and it's come through as a final submission. So thanks for running through that. So this is the way that each application review is going to occur. Do you have any questions about this process? All right, if not, we are going to get started. Panelists, make sure you're back on your panelist home screen and in the pending final review section. Please open application from Worcester County Arts Council. Application ID 2024-19453. The panelists that conducted the in-depth assignment, TWE, will now have 3 minutes to share any information gathered.
Thank you. The Worcester County Arts Council, they have a great mission for learning to balance the resources throughout the county that they give. From my conversation with their great executive director, as well as things that's listed on their website, I gathered 4 main positive notes. The first is that the executive director provided me with a list of all the nonprofits and people that they've awarded grants to within the past year, which is fantastic. And this represents their goal of supporting the creatives within their county, including the ones that may come from like a lower social economic status, that have limited resources, etc. The second note is during their strategic planning sessions, they went into nursing homes, schools, rec centers, etc., to gather feedback, which I felt was a great method of talking directly to the people they serve instead of just sending out like a virtual survey. The third note is because many of the communities within this county may not have Wi-Fi, they managed to do face-to-face meetings with many people, which was great. And fourth, they have a wonderful list of youth-focused workshops and scholarships, including a scholarship that just closed on May 2nd for middle and high school students, which is fantastic. From the written grant, I recommend 2 small changes. The first is more specific detail on what questions were posed during these strategic planning sessions. And second, in their grant, they listed that they help to plan certain festivals, and it would be great to provide more detail on what this council does in helping to like plan those festivals and whether or not they make money from those festivals and things like that. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Panelists, you now have 5 minutes for additional discussion.
I'd like to say great job on your evaluation, and I concur with what you said in reading it. Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say great job. I know y'all had a conversation about the partnerships. The only question I had, I was just curious to see if they had a methodology to they explain how they approach the different collaborations, or if y'all discuss anything to that capacity.
Collaborations with who? Can you elaborate on the question a little bit more?
Yeah, it was I noted that they had some stronger art programs in the local schools that were identified as important. And let me refer back to the application really quickly. Let's see. I think it was in regards to the needs, the current needs. Let's see. Yeah, I just remember you mentioned that y'all talked about the different partnerships that were formed, or the list of non-profits. I was just curious to see, I guess, how they went about securing those different
Oh,
partnerships. Yeah, that was
sorry. The list they sent me was a list of folks that they've gave certain funds to over the past year or so. Not really people that they work with, if that makes sense.
Oh, okay,
It's
gotcha.
who they fund. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. That was
Any more questions?
I don't have any more questions.
Okay.
I had a note about they had mentioned making changes to improve their mission. So I was just wondering if they talked anyways with you about how they anticipate kind of addressing that.
That's a good question. Let me see if I can skim through my notes real quick before we run out of time. We did talk about their board and how they're still working on changing certain things. To make recommendation skills. I don't think we've like really dived into that part of things, but we did talk about the board and how their board has like grown and that they feel very supported by the board, which is great. So
Okay, thanks.
Panelists, are there any additional thoughts, questions, recommendations? If not, David, as the staff discipline expert, do you have any additional information to share?
Sorry, y'all. I'm juggling like 4 devices over here, trying to stay in step. My sound issues are popping up, but I don't have anything to add. But I am quite impressed with their efforts in outreach and the way of outreach to their particular geography, which I mean, if they say it pretty early in the application, there's a pretty significant divide, as it relates to the different economy or economic backgrounds, rather, of their constituents. And the ethnic divide is very real and has systemic roots. So the challenge for them in reaching across communities is very real where they are. And I really applaud their efforts in that way. But that is my comment. And so the tail end of my comment is to ask of you all your recommendation to approve this application or request revisions.
Approve.
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 Fantastic. Thank you.
approve also. I'm sorry.
Yes.
I had to unmute myself there. Okay.
All right, thank you, panelists. Based on the information gathered from the discussion, please take time now to revise any of your comments in Smart Simple in alignment with the rubric. And when finished, please click complete. We'll take 2 minutes to do so now.
Thirty seconds left. Thank you, panelists. Time is up.
So panelists, if you could wrap up your final edits and please make sure you're hitting the complete button. There are 2 that I'm waiting to see come through.
Yeah, I'm having trouble when I try to do complete because it says the form does not have every single rubric filled. I'm not making any more suggestions. So I'm not sure what to do on that.
Yeah, so for any comment boxes that you have blank, you could just write NA.
Okay, I pretty much tried doing that, but I will do that again. Okay.
And Carrie, looks like I'm not seeing that complete button hit for you. Were you having the same issue?
No, let's see. I submitted it. It disappeared from the tab. So I know I hit complete, but I don't know why it might not be showing up on your end.
So let's make sure we were in the right application. So this one was the number ends in 19453.
Yeah, that one's no longer in my tab. That's weird. 19453.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's under my completed reviews. Let me try to open it up again. No. Yeah, that was under my completed reviews.
Okay, and it's not in your pending final review section? It's not there any longer? Okay, let me double check something. All right. I'm not sure what's going on, Carrie, but I do see that you have something submitted. So we'll proceed with that. Thanks.
Great. Sorry
Yeah,
about
I
that.
think
don't know
I
what's going
submitted
on.
mine also, so hopefully you have that.
Yep, I do see that. Thank you, Judy.
Okay.
And the final recommendation is to accept the application. Next. Please open application from the Arts Council of Anne Arundel County. Application ID 2024-19500. The panelist that conducted the in-depth assignment, Judy, will now have 3 minutes to share any information gathered. Judy, you are on mute, looks like.
Sorry about that. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay. I hate this remote stuff. Anyway, okay. So yeah, I thought this was a really pretty comprehensive and well done application. I had some questions, and I spoke with April Nyman, who's the executive director of the Arts Council of Anne Arundel County. There were, a few questions that I had about, well, I would say one thing that I noticed was done in their application somewhat, and I noticed actually through all of them, is the use of acronyms. And, I worked for the government, so I use them as well. But I do think that somewhere in every application, at the first time it's used, it should have whatever it means spelled out, because I was not familiar with all of these terms. And I think that, so basically, as I'm going through, it's sort of, I have to stop, well, what does this mean? So a lot of that, my issues kind of revolved around sort of understanding what she was saying. And after we talked and I got a better understanding of that, then I really had almost really no objections to anything. There were some questions about, let's see, current needs, and talking about a conference, a DEIA conference, a DEIA in the arts conference, and that would involve training. So that was clarified. They use the term modeling a couple of times, and I didn't, I felt that needed clarification. And she said, well, that means setting standards for expectations. Again, that was, helpful. They use something called Leadership Maryland and Leadership Anne Arundel County. And I also wanted clarification on exactly what that does. And it really, it's like continuing education, but it's at the state and county level. So that was clarified. Their new mission statement, I wanted to know if that was completed or in process, and that is it's strategic planning for the fall, and it will be reviewed at that point. I wanted clarification that the current needs for education was not currently part of the school curriculum, and she clarified that's for additional programming. The annual DEIA conference is basically, she said basically
Thank you
that.
for the panelists.
I'm sorry?
Thank you. That's
Time is up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. All right.
Thank you. Panelists, you now have 5 minutes for additional discussion. Judy, if you'd like to complete your thought there, please feel free to do so.
Oh, yeah, no, she was just saying that the DEIA conference is actually the arts conference as it exists, but expanded. And so that's really all. And most of the rest was just asking for explanation of some of the terms. So I'm done.
Thank you, Judy. I'm curious, did you all talk about the size of their board? Are they trying to grow their board? Do they feel supported by the board? Like, did you all talk about the board and their work in like developing the mission, developing programs and things like that?
Not directly. I mean, I felt like that everything that I needed to make a judgment was actually in the application summary. Yeah, I did not sense that there was any issue at all with their board who was either on it or the size of it.
Okay.
Judy, I appreciated your comments about acronyms.
Mhm.
I happen to be really familiar with leadership in the counties and leadership Maryland, but I appreciated your input. Not everybody is. And
Right.
it's just a good reminder that even though I've been through it, there are a lot of people out there that haven't been. So looking through that lens, I appreciate you asking for the clarification on acronyms and things of that sort. So thank you.
Yeah, I just think sometimes there's, I'm certainly guilty of it too, that there's sort of a presumption or an assumption that who's ever reading it, has been through this with that person who's written it. And, I, as I said to the executive director, don't assume anything. Don't assume that, I know anything, because I don't. And the next person may also not know anything. So you're putting yourself at a disadvantage if you don't really kind of spell it out.
Yeah, thank you, Judy. I also thought this was a pretty comprehensive application. I too noted the acronyms and like certain jargon and phrases, like they mentioned technical advancements, technology advancements. And I was wondering, like, did that mean like AI or like crypto or meta currency, like all those new trends, and like what the funding would look like? And then I also noted that the smaller applications were reviewed by the staff, but then they had the more like the larger amounts applications were reviewed by the board of directors. So I wasn't sure if there was like a different scoring rubric between the two, and like why was that necessary. But those were my only comments that I noted. Other than that, I thought everything else was pretty clear.
Yeah, no, they did reference something called mini grants. So
okay.
I wanted to find out exactly what that was. And she explained that as being, these are small grants for, basically, where are my notes here? Small grants for activities for the public, but not necessarily for a 501c3. So
Got it. That makes sense.
Yeah. So in other words, it may be for a group. I'm just, like an arts group, well, like a painting group, or maybe a musical group that wants to do a performance. They're not organized, not a 501c3, with all that official stuff. And maybe they can just do sort of a small grant for that purpose, but, anyway, that was a good distinction. And I think it's actually really practical in terms of, encouraging, groups to kind of get started, and see is there interest in what we're doing. So I think it's almost like a seed money kind of thing. That's not their expression. That is mine. But that's how I see it. That's how you sort of get started. You can, get our people interested, the people want to, take advantage of this, and then maybe you can grow. So again, though, the seed money, that's my term, not theirs.
That makes sense. Thank you for the clarity.
Sure.
I'll just also echo comments about acronyms, I noted that as well. So I think that was really important that you address that with them.
Yeah, there were a few other things that they used. Like I had to just ask her, like, what is Paint the Town? What are Annie Awards? What are Art Angel Scholarship? And she just explained that. But again, those are things, you know, because I don't live in Anne Arundel County, so I wouldn't know what those were. But anyway, it's just, but I did notice that in most of the, you know, application summaries, you know, just this presumption that we know what it means, and it doesn't.
5 minutes is up.
Thank you. David, as a staff discipline expert, do you have any?
Oh, apologies, wrong device. Yes, I do want to comment. There's a lot of growth with this organization, in particular through the unfortunate pandemic. They were actively working and having very important conversations that have yielded a great many things in the way of community partnerships and expanded programming. And those conversations also included the immediate community. They are situated in what feels like a very isolated place in Anne Arundel County. And so the work that's required to get folks to them, to entice folks in to take part in their programming is significant. And those conversations are ongoing, and hopefully, will be a consistent thing moving in to the next couple of years. I do want to
Time
make
is up.
acronyms. Sorry.
Oh, 1 minute is done.
Gotcha. Just want to make a comment about acronyms. It's not our position as a Maryland State Arts Council to tailor or make a recommendation about the use of acronyms. We can ask that across the board applicants consider being a little bit more forthcoming in their explanations of those acronyms. And I agree with you all, though, when it comes to the leadership acronyms and the various leadership programs that their leadership actually participate in or have participated in. It's kind of confusing because of how the programs are labeled, the leadership and the leadership Anne Arundel, but they are pretty important programs. And on first encounter, the acronyms don't do them any justice. And then hearing the names thereafter, as they are articulated in this application, still don't help. It's like, what do you mean the leadership? So any case, just making a point of it. There are different grant writing styles, and we're not here to really police that. Although I think all of us as staff persons have been in the place where we wish that we could make that recommendation to applicants across the board, that wherever possible, please provide clarity and avoid acronyms. And so that's an ongoing conversation internally that we'll keep working on. So at this time, I'm going to move us forward and ask that panelists at this time, we ask that you provide your final recommendations to accept or request revisions of the application.
So this is where we press complete.
This is where you verbally contribute
Oh,
whether you accept or request revisions.
well, I accept.
Except
Accept.
Excellent. Thank you. And Kathy, I'll hand it back over.
Thank you. Based on the information gathered from the discussion, please take time now to advise any of your comments in Smart Simple in alignment with the rubric. When finished, click complete. We'll take 2 minutes to do so now.
And Kathy, I'm just curious if mine went through this time.
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Time is up.
And the final recommendation is to accept. Next up, please open application from the Cecil County Arts Council, application ID 2024-19916. The panelists that conducted the in-depth assignment, Mary, will now have 3 minutes to share any information gathered.
Okay, so thank you everyone for reading this through me and with me and giving me some points. I think that Cecil County has a lot of work that they're doing to rebuild the organization. And the thing, kind of the same thing that Judy had with the last organization, I would recommend that the terminology isn't negative. Statements like they had mediocre fundraisers. One of their open studio tour was a snore, were the words that were used to describe things. Another thing they talked about is there was they're coming back from the phraseology of this is the way we've always done it. I'm sure all of us that have worked with their organizations have had this situation. I would recommend that they consider focusing on what they're doing now. I think they are doing some good things. I saw that. I think their statistics were point on. I had a little bit of problem with terms like bedroom community, and I asked her about that. I met with the executive director because I definitely have a headspace what I think a bedroom community is, but I don't want to have that headspace. I want to know what they're talking about so that I know that I'm not having my own information come into the conversation, if that makes sense. The thing like Maryland 5-star, I had no clue what that was. I don't know anything about horses, and apparently that's an Olympic competition for horse racing. Terms like keyboard weary, I would have liked to have heard, okay, they're keyboard weary. What are we doing to help that? This is what that means. People want to be away from their computer. And, but I do think they have, and my conversations with her, the questions were asked, they don't have regular meetings. How do they meet? They have town meetings and they meet after those and when people are frustrated. And the recruitment question that was asked, they constantly recruit. And I talked about equity and diversity in those. And her comment was they have 2 artists, someone from a restaurant, VFW people that work with the public. How do they get their board members? And that was the answer. Also, they feel that they're looking for board members that have strong communication, strong people skills, and are able to do fundraisers. I asked, there were some negative comments about the local town council, town meetings, and she said that the town representatives are very engaged and very responsible, but when they get in the way, they just simply work around the county government. And they are working to increase partners and bring more events, which I saw in examples of those.
All right, thank you. Panelists, you now have 5 minutes for additional discussion.
Yeah, this is Judy. I agree. I felt it was a little bit harsh and negative. I think the comment about the 3 elderly ladies, I think was, as an elderly lady myself, it just seemed kind of personal. So, but I'd say that was, you know, the biggest kind of takeaway I got, that it seemed very negative in terms of what I guess the executive director was trying to accomplish. You know, it was sort of, well, this was wrong and that was wrong. And so anyway, but that's, you know, that was sort of the main thing.
Yeah, I noted in the demographic data that yeah, some of the comments, like they had a very depressed real estate, a terrible drug problem, a homeless epidemic. I just wish they would have provided, I guess, data points to support those claims, because they just seem to yeah, they were very intense statements, but no data to back it up. So if they're going to make statements like those, I think that I would recommend that it would be backed up by some sources or something behind it, just to add more context.
I just want to say quickly, thank you all for what you said. I didn't read their grants through that lens, or maybe I should say I didn't necessarily notice those like harsh words the way y'all did. So I really appreciate to hear that people read grants differently from me. Mary, with all of that being said, I am very curious to know, when you talked to them, was the tone and the language used the same as what was written, or did the vibe change? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I'm glad you brought that up, because I was trying to, you know, not bring in, obviously, my own thoughts. Oh, David, sorry. Into the conversation. So when I talked to her, I tried to ask questions like, and I really worked with the recruitment question and the town meeting. So yes, I still heard that negativity tone. It wasn't as strong. I have to be really honest. It was not as strong, but like I was looking for some kind of diversity conversation about recruiting board members. And I had to fight really hard, I thought, to like saying you have 2 restaurant owners, or two artists, 2 restaurant owners, someone from the VFW. That doesn't necessarily equate, in my mind, of diverse, you know, because I don't know what someone who's a member of a VFW, I don't know what that means to me. I don't know what their background is. I don't understand how they might. And then that's when she went on to say strong communication, strong people skills, and people that are doing fundraisers. And I'm like, okay, that's what you're looking for. Because it didn't I almost felt like there was a language barrier. Like I was looking for telling me what, like when you go to get someone on your board, how do they feel about the arts? What is their objective? How do they want to see the arts work in their community? Those were the information. And like someone from a restaurant to me was a neutral person. Do you understand what I'm saying? I didn't understand that. So
I'm going to interject here, folks, panelists. Just I want to remind you that we're pointing out a gap or a deficiency as it relates to the application, but we always want to end with framing it in the way of a recommendation. So that's what we're working towards. You would recommend then, in noticing all of these things, they do X, Y, and Z.
and that's what I was trying. I would recommend revising the language to be focused on more positive work that they are doing. That's my recommendation.
Time is up.
All right, thank you. David, as a staff discipline expert, do you have any additional information to share?
Yeah. Yes, I have. Just a few thoughts as we were moving through this application. You know, from one from one organization to the next. You know, they are definitely some systemic issues at play, and a lot of the folks that um, take on leadership at these organizations have been there 20 and 30 plus years. And sometimes moving forward, is a hard thing to do, especially, if you're not in the continuous practice of holding space for conversations about change, for conversations about how do you become more equitable and diverse in your offerings. And so we want to recognize those challenges um, and like you're doing, frame recommendations that'll help promote a different thought process in the way of community engagement and also strategic planning. Ultimately, that opens up, more opportunity for cross-cultural collaboration. So as you guys are, amending your notes and or making your recommendations, just keep that in mind. So at this time, though, I again, panelists, at this time, we ask that you provide a final recommendation to accept or request revisions of the application. A verbal response, please.
I don't know if it's okay to ask this question. If we request changes, does that mean they don't get funding?
Oh, no, you can always accept with the caveat of meeting those recommendations prior
Okay.
to.
Okay, thank you. Accept on my end.
Accept.
Except
Accept.
Fantastic. Thank you all. Kathy?
Thank you. Based on the information gathered from the discussion, please take time now to revise any of your comments in Smart Simple in alignment with the rubric. When finished, click Complete. We'll take 2 minutes to do so now. And the final recommendation is to accept. Next up, please open application from Queen Anne's County Arts Council, application ID 2024-20319. The panelists that conducted the in-depth assignment, Sarah, will now have 3 minutes to share any information gathered.
Okay, so I thought that this was a very strong application. In my meeting, I met with the executive director and their grants manager, and we talked a lot about the sort of diversity of the county, that it's a mix between rural and a lot of small concentrated areas. So they've really, with those two different diverse needs, they've really worked to go to the areas and bring the art to them, which I thought was an interesting way to go about it. They're seeking out artists and supporting them, and offering to help the agencies, the other organizations within the county to get grant funding. They were finding that a lot of their art programs, people were sort of neutral to the online events. And so they've really worked to sort of promote what they call signature events, which are specific types of exhibitions. And then they do concerts that are called Thursdays in the Park. And so that's things that they have found that really unify the county, and they've seen that people will be willing to sort of travel for those events. They talked about having specific meetings with their artists and getting to know what they need so that they can better serve them. And in terms of their board, they talked about seeking out members that have specific skills that can support the overall organization. So the board is involved. Their school programs and arts and education, and sort of the ways that they have reached out to different organizations and schools. They've promoted mini grants as well, where they use them for different programs. And they, one thing that I had sort of had a question about was there was they used two different names in their application. So one was the Center for Arts, and then, which is, they clarified as the more kind of inclusive name for the organization, and Queen Anne's County Arts Council is their more like legal name. So that was just one thing that I had noted throughout the application, was kind of the use of both terms. So I appreciated getting that clarification as well.
Thank you. Panelists, you now have 5 minutes for additional discussion.
Thank you, Sarah. I did note in the application, the applicant did mention several activities, projects, and programs, but I noticed that they didn't include it on the actual chart of the 3-year plan. Did he speak about that?
Yes, we did talk about that. I had a specific question asking about that because I had noted that it was missing from the application, and they responded later that it was an issue, I guess, with uploading the file. So they did have it, and we talked through different programs that they have in place. They were saying that because the chart was sort of mapping out in progress programs coming and sort of like future ideas. And so they were stating that a lot of their programs are sort of falling into all of those categories in different ways. So they were talking a lot about the music concerts and the exhibits that they do in their arts council space, and how those are recurring. They, are reaching out to work with different groups each time. So we did talk about that aspect of the application.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Panelists, are there any additional thoughts, comments, questions? If not, David, as a staff discipline expert, do you have any additional information to share?
Not much more. I do think this was a strong application, although I would have, just like you all mentioned, like to have seen more in the way of specific programming and overall impact of said programming. But I think that they are on mission and on task. Um, Much more to say beyond that. So, panelists, at this time, we are asked that you provide your final recommendation to accept or request revisions of the application.
Accept.
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 Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you. Based on the information gathered from the discussion, please take time now to revise any of your comments in Smart Simple in alignment with the rubric. When finished, click Complete. We'll take 2 minutes to do so now. And the final recommendation is to accept. All right, folks, we're going to take a brief break right now. So let's take a 10-minute break, and we will come back after that break to complete the final 2 reviews. So the time is now 11:26, so we'll see you back here at 11:36. See you back here at 11:36. Thanks, folks. All right, folks, the time is now 11:36. If we can start to make our way back. I see Carrie, Twee, Sarah, Mary and Judy. Mary, you're back. Thank you. Judy, welcome back. And do we have our team? Chad and David. All right.
Here.
Awesome. Great. All right. Well, let's proceed to the next review. Please open application from St. Mary's County Arts Council. Application ID 2024-20924. The panelists that conducted the in-depth assignment, Carrie, will now have 3 minutes to share any information gathered.
Yeah, so overall, Susie is their new executive director. She took over this year in January. As the former director retired. So they have been working together to kind of pass the baton. Susie wanted to make it her goal to carry out the vision of her predecessor and the longstanding board members. And so from what I've gathered, St. Mary's wants to preserve and continue to promote a greater appreciation for the arts, definitely through public art and interdisciplinary arts. Because the county is so rural, they want to achieve this by, one, continuing to activate Leonard Town to make it the hub for arts and entertainment, and two, to utilize and establish partnerships through churches, libraries, senior centers, and other organizations to reach populations who may not be inclined to visit Leonard Town. So I had a couple questions about some of the phrases that were used, like cultural treasures specific to St. Mary's County. And me being from the South, I asked her about what Southern culture are rooted in St. Mary's. We talked about the stuffed ham, which is a staple to the area. We also talked about the African-American community being forerunners and celebrating diversity and helping to reframe history. So the public art in Lexington Park has a Civil War museum that honors U.S. colored troops and soldiers, as well as they plan to create murals around that element in the park. St. Mary's is also home to Souderly Plantation, which held enslaved people and is now a tourist attraction and a historic landmark that they want to preserve. It was also important to their predecessor to preserve the legacy of African Americans surrounding the Souderly House. So they plan on getting a landscaping grant to do some design work in the next 5 years. In terms of inclusion, I noted in the application that St. Mary's said it was difficult for inclusion. So I asked her about the specific breakdown of the demographic makeup of the population. And Susie told me that the population consisted of naval-based residents, St. Mary's college students, polarized politicians, a Spanish-speaking community, and an Asian community that's under the radar. So they have been looking to diversify their programming to cater to all the different communities. They have 2 new galleries. They have public art. They have a STEAM-related interdisciplinary project that they've been utilizing. They also have partnerships with organizations that serve underprivileged communities, the Spanish-speaking populations, and serve people of color, as well as low-income populations. However, she did note that documentation has been a concern, so folks have been either discouraged from applying or they just don't apply. A couple things that were strong. I thought they had a lot of existing programming that were already established. They just wanted funding to kind of continue these items. And another thing that the only things that I think would have made the application stronger was on the tangible examples. She was able to email me some pictures of the benches that they have activated in the park with art that they plan to continue, and maybe some examples of how.
All right, thank you. Panelists, you know how
they can activate other areas outside of Leonard Town. But yeah, the examples that we talked about.
Carrie,
okay.
The 3 minutes was up. So panelists, you now have 5 minutes for additional discussion, and Carrie, feel free to complete your thought there if you would like in this time period.
Oh yes, I was just going to say examples that we discussed about the murals and the U.S. Colored Troops Monument, and the example that talked about how they focus on theme with intersecting art and technology. I thought those would have been cool to mention in the application, but that's all I had.
Most of the questions I had, you directly spoke to, Carrie. So thank you for that.
Oh yeah, you had great questions, and I wanted to make sure I elaborated so that everyone has clarity. So thank you for those questions.
Panelists, are there any additional thoughts, questions, recommendations? If not, David, as a staff discipline expert, do you have any additional information to share?
I just want to lift up A&E work collaboration with St. Mary's County Arts Council. And while there is new leadership at St. Mary's County Arts Council, the leadership at the A&E in place for quite some time, and has actually throughout the pandemic made major strides in the way of, I'll call it bridging programming. It's just applicable to smaller rural county arts agencies that, it's applicable that they they all share that same challenge in bridging communities, especially, we're talking about communities that have lived separate, lived apart on purpose for such a long time. And that arts organizations want to take on this work and are successful in the case of Leonardtown and St. Mary's Arts Council is commendable. It's hard work. And when you get to, like I have a recent past, visit these places and take note of the change, the active change, it's really heartwarming. There's also the recognition of what they call cultural assets. And myself personally feeling a bit conflicted, but you have to embrace the past, recognize the past in order to move forward, right? And
Time is up.
yeah, thank you. They're actively, in this case, in the instance of this application, actively embracing the history. A lot of it mired in slavery and or related topics. So, any case, just recognizing their efforts. So On to my final note. Again, panelists, at this time, we ask that you provide final recommendations to accept or request revisions of the application.
Accept.
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 Thank you so much, Kathy.
Thank you. Based on the information gathered from the discussion, please take time now to revise any of your comments in Smart Simple in alignment with the rubric. When finished, click Complete. We'll take 2 minutes to do so now.
My page isn't being responsive.
Is it not loading?
Well, like the pointed finger, and it says right now, page unresponsive. You can wait for it to become responsive or exit the page. Should I exit and come back in?
Yeah, I would recommend exiting and trying to come back in and see what that does.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, mine was just kind of spinning.
Mine just did the same thing, Kathy.
Yeah, mine is too.
Well, did mine go through?
Oh, wait a minute. Okay. Mine went through finally. It might
Okay.
maybe because we're all doing it at once.
Okay, yeah, I do see scores from Judy, Carrie, and Twee.
Mine should have just gone in.
Yep, I see yours.
Okay, thank you.
Time is up.
And the final recommendation is to accept. Next up, please open application from Prince George's Arts and Humanities Council. Application ID 2024-21329. The panelists that conducted the in-depth assignment, Twee, will now have 3 minutes to share any information gathered.
Thank you. So the Prince George's Arts and Humanities Council, they serve a very large county. They managed to do a lot of work within that county, which is great. From my conversation with the executive director, one thing that they've started doing exceptionally well is leaning on resources outside of their staff. So for example, they've formed partnerships with the National Park and Planning Commission, as well as the Mayor's Office of Housing Development, to help them get things done, talk to people within the community, which I think is fantastic that they've managed to get like the mayor's department on board with what they're doing. I didn't have a lot of questions for the executive director because I thought their grant did give enough detail on most things, but during our talk, she still gave me lots of details and stories about what they've been doing, people they've been talking to. From the written grant, I do have 2 notes for things that maybe they could do better or write better for next time. One of the things is just a little bit more data about certain things. For example, one of the things they wrote is that many of the nonprofits wish to buy instead of rent where they work and do business and things like that. So I was curious to know more about how many nonprofits may have like missed rent payment within the past year simply because they know that rent is starting to get very high where they work. So just a little more numbers about the things that the local nonprofits need. Another recommendation based on what I talked about with the executive director is finding ways to support the very small nonprofits. For example, she said that they do give funds, but a lot of the smaller nonprofits don't really they don't seek funding at the rate that the larger nonprofits do, not because they don't need it, but because the amount of time that it takes to write grants doesn't feel worth it to the smaller nonprofits. So I really think they should find ways to make their grant a little more simple for the smaller nonprofits that don't need as much money as the larger nonprofits do. But besides that, I thought their application was great and my conversation with the executive director was great. Thank you.
Thank you. Panelists, you now have 5 minutes for additional discussion.
Yeah, this is Judy. I just had a question. I saw under the mission initially, and this may be that I didn't understand it entirely. It says something about SEL frameworks and then a social and emotional learning.
Yes.
So is that still within the framework of Arts Council kind of stuff?
Good question. I don't think we directly talked about it. Let me try to scroll through my notes to see if we mentioned it at all, but I don't think so.
I mean, it mentions integrating social justice and SEL framework. That was just my only question. And I didn't find it, it's not a big deal as far as I can see, but I was just sort of curious because it seemed to go a little bit outside of what I think of as like arts.
What they do.
Art directly,
Right. Yeah, we didn't talk about it in that way. The one thing that the executive director did mention in terms of social emotional learning, social justice and things like that is within the next year, her and the board would like to learn more themselves about how to do those things. And so they are trying to put funds to take certain classes and things like that so that they can learn more about those things.
So this is for them to do, not for like students to do. In other words, the board would be the students, I guess is what I'm saying here.
I want to say partially yes, because that is the way she and I talked about it.
Okay. No, I mean, I think it's a good thing. I just wanted a
Yeah.
little clarity on that. Okay.
Panelists, are there any additional thoughts, questions, recommendations? If not, David, as a staff discipline expert, do you have any additional information to share?
No, but just emphasizing that this is a great organization. Rhonda Dallas is a powerhouse, and yeah, I'm looking forward to actually visiting. You guys know I'm still under a year in this position, so I haven't made it out to visit everyone, but have had lots of, like we all have, lots of Google Meet conversations and or exchanges with leadership there, but never ever being able to set foot in the geography. So I'm looking forward to that. So at this time, again, panelists, at this time, we ask that you provide a final recommendation to accept or request revisions of the application.
Accept.
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 All right, fantastic. Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you. Based on the information gathered from the discussion, please take time now to revise any of your comments in Smart Simple in alignment with the rubric. When finished, click Complete. We'll take 2 minutes to do so now. And the final recommendation is to accept. And that was our final review for today. Thank you, panelists, for your time and thoughtfulness. And we want to note the importance of this process and your role in it. Your discussion and recommendations are immensely valuable. Thank you so much. And also a thank you to our counselor, John, for joining us today to monitor the panel. And these final recommendations affect the funding and future planning of each county arts agency. And additionally, panelists' comments and recommendations are provided to organizations to ensure further transparency and encourage organizational stability. Grant award notifications for county arts agencies will be sent out in July. So this concludes the public portion of the meeting. Observers, feel free to contact us if you have any questions about today's process. And panelists, please hang on just for a minute so we can touch base on some things. All right, David, you want to chime in?
I certainly will. I'm just working this mute button today. So yes, again, I echo Kathy. Thank you all for your hard work and participation in this process. I just sent everybody a meeting link so that we can have so we can debrief about the process and I can talk to you about next steps. I also want to remind you all, if you haven't done so already, make sure that you have a signed and completed W-9 uploaded to Smart Simple. I believe you all do, but if anything's changed in your world, and particularly your address or what have you, please make sure you do upload an updated W-9 to ensure timely payment. and I'll be submitting invoices on your behalf. Okay, that's all I got.
Yeah, this is Judy. I have to leave. I didn't realize we were going to have this, debriefing after. I'm sorry. I have a doctor's appointment, but I'm happy to talk to you later about anything. So,
No problem, Judy. We appreciate you.
oh, all right. Sorry. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, folks. So we'll see you over at that feedback session meeting at 12:15. All right. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you over there.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.